Welcome back to Close Up. This year, the race for governor has been somewhat slower than usual to develop. By this time in 2023, we had two major candidates either declared or exploring a run. In this cycle, incumbent Governor Kelly Ayotte, only 7 months removed from a double-digit victory, is casting a long shadow. But Democrats are also sorting out issues of their own. In fact, conditions are such on that side of the aisle that a Democratic candidate from 2024 is now running for governor in 2026 as an independent. Jon Kiper is our guest this morning on Close Up. Jon, thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me back. It's great to be back in the studio.
All right. And so for someone who came out of relatively nowhere in 2024, you did pretty well, exceeded expectations, got about 11,000 votes in that Democratic primary. So why now run as an independent?
You know, I think people in New Hampshire and people in the entire country are tired of partisan politics. They're tired of the infighting. They're tired of seeing these two groups of people not really representing the issues that we as just average citizens have, you know, basically economic issues. That's where I want to see the focus, and that's where my focus will be as governor, is helping people in New Hampshire do better, working class people and middle class people who are really struggling in this state and in this country.
What were some of the specific motivating factors or prompts that made you leave the Democratic Party?
You know, it was funny. I was going around the state, going to these town meetings with Democrats, and at several of the meetings, I'd be sitting there giving my pitch about housing. I'd say, we need housing because of inflation and because of homelessness and because we need more young people in the state to take care of the aging population. And more than once, people would look at me and they'd say, yeah, you know, we don't want any more housing in New Hampshire. You know, our kids need housing, but we don't, and we're all set. And these were generally older folks. And at one point, I just thought to myself, I'm like, one of us is in the wrong meeting. You know, either I need to find another party or the Democrats need to change. And I honestly thought that I could get in there and change the Democratic Party and change its viewpoint and help it open up to a broader scope of people. And they just are inflexible. The leadership does not want to change. They don't want to learn any lessons. And fundamentally, the Democratic establishment does not want to hear opinions that they disagree with. That's really the biggest problem.
You know, Democrats are losing ground with working class voters. That's you. You look the part too. They're also losing ground with men. And you know, the New York Times published a story saying that the Democratic Party is going to be spending $20 million on a project titled, quote, "Speaking with American Men, a Strategic Plan." That in itself seems like a bit of a problem, spending millions of dollars just to start a conversation. But the idea is they're saying we don't even know how to talk to these guys.
And it's so true. I mean, I felt really kind of alienated at many points in the campaign. I mean, you had Jeanne Shaheen getting up there at the New Hampshire Democratic Convention and saying, I want to see a female governor. You know, I'm sitting there saying, I'm here with my son. Do we have a role in this party? And frankly, I think the answer is we don't. I don't think they wanted me. I think it didn't really have to do with my gender. They used that. But it was really about the fact that I was an outsider who was not part of the elite ruling class.
You know, the sentiments you've expressed about parties are common, I think, and reflected in the fact that New Hampshire has so many undeclared voters. But there are some stark political realities to confront. What do you say to someone who says essentially all that's going to happen from an independent run for governor is that you'll be a spoiler for the Democratic candidate?
Well, given that the Democrats haven't put up a candidate yet, I would say that if they do put up a candidate, that person will be a spoiler for me. I can win this election. I can beat Kelly Ayotte, and my message to the Democrats is, do not put up a candidate. You will lose. You have lost for a decade straight. You have proven you do not understand what the independent voters of New Hampshire want, and I do, because I'm one of them.
Is it the person or the people running, or is it the policies?
You know, a lot of Democratic policies are very popular, but the people that are presenting them are not. And this is what the Democrats cannot seem to get through their heads, is that if you have someone, you know, like Joyce Craig talking about housing, who also was evicting homeless people, you know, from Manchester and pushing them from one end of the city to another, that's not a solution. People want to hear common sense solutions, and they want to see them in practice. And that's where the Democrats are just failing the American people and the people of New Hampshire.
Take us through the platform. Obviously, we talked a little bit about housing. That's a huge part of it for you, and also cannabis legalization. You're going to be running the same playbook, essentially, as an independent?
You know, I think one thing that people don't want to talk about, politicians in New Hampshire, is school funding and how that affects property taxes and housing. And I'm going to say the quiet part out loud. We need a new way to fund our schools to bring property taxes down. That's it. Now, whether that's an income tax, a sales tax, a goods and services tax, a value-added tax, I want to have that discussion, have the people of New Hampshire say, hey, I want this tax, I want this tax. Let's debate it, and let's come to a consensus where at least 60% of us agree, hey, we need this new revenue stream so that we can bring our property taxes down so that elderly people can stay in their homes, so that, you know, the working class people that are just getting killed by these ever-increasing property taxes can live a good life.
Bottom line, you're open to a new broad-based tax, essentially.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of things we got to look at. I mean, who has money right now? It's not the middle class. It's not the working class. It's the rich and the corporations that they own, and that's where we need to go. There's companies in this state making hundreds of millions of dollars, and a lot of those companies are avoiding paying taxes. You know, you've got Amazon and Tesla and the CEO saying, oh, I didn't pay taxes in 2018. I didn't pay taxes in 2020. Hey, I pay so many taxes. You know, I pay rooms and meals and income tax and business profit tax and property taxes. And at the end of the day, I have very little to show for it. And I see these guys, these billionaires, with all the money. And that's where we need to go to get that funding.
On the housing issue, this is a bill that got sidelined right now for more study, but SB 84 in the legislature sparked a lot of debate. This is the bill that essentially would try to create more density in housing by overriding local zoning, deals with lot size, infrastructure, sewerage, those kinds of things, basically trying to open towns that don't want more development for more development. If you're governor, is that something you would sign?
You know, it's really tough. We have to ride this line between our local control, and that has been, you know, a cornerstone of New Hampshire's identity. But also, we got to recognize that we need the housing, and some of these towns are really hurting themselves in the long term. And I really want to educate these planning boards and these zoning boards. And frankly, I've been seeing that working. You know, in Newmarket, we've gotten some housing passed, and I went to the zoning board meetings, and I saw those guys understood the issue. You know, and you see Dover's building a lot, Portsmouth is building a lot. Like it's happening, and I think it's just the message is getting out there, and it's going to take a little time. But I think we are making good progress, and I'm so happy to see that this issue is being at least addressed by the legislature in some way.
As a candidate, Governor Kelly Ayotte said she'll stand up to President Donald Trump if necessary, when necessary, for the state of New Hampshire. How do you think she's doing on that front?
I know that they're pretty good friends, you know, the two of them, and I think, you know, we have not been at the forefront of, say, the ICE raids, for instance, at least not in a big way. But, you know, one of my friends called me last night, and he said one of my 12-year-old son's classmates just got deported, you know, and his family got deported. And he was like, what do I tell my son? And I'll tell you right now, that's a great way to radicalize the youth of America against the Republicans and against their, frankly, inhumane treatment of humans is what it is. You know, and yes, we need common sense reform at the border. We need common sense immigration, but that's not what they're doing. You know, we need to make it easier to come into this country legally to work and harder to come in illegally. And that's the bottom line. If
a town or city does not want to cooperate with immigration and customs enforcement, should that be their right?
You know, it's definitely a sticky situation. But I will say this. If ICE was going to come and deport a bunch of farm workers that were going to leave a bunch of tomatoes on the field, I would be against that. If ICE was going to come in and deport a bunch of roofers who are helping to build the housing that we need to bring down inflation, I am against that. You know, we've kind of created this system with this broken immigration where we have millions of people here that are earning money and paying taxes. And to me, those are the last people you want to go after. But they're the easiest because they're in public. I mean, the criminals are hiding. They're not worried about this. You know, they're going after just the lowest hanging fruit, which is some guy at a Home Depot looking for work. You know, and to me, while I recognize that we need a new system of immigration, what they're doing, I think, is cruel and it's not helpful. And frankly, it's only going to hurt the economy.
Clearly, you see a lot of nuance here, but is sanctuary policy good policy? Because even with the people who aren't committing crimes, very sympathetic, you have the other side of that. Like in Massachusetts back in February, there's a Guatemalan immigrant charged with child sexual assault, had an immigration retainer. It was ignored, and he was released. A lot of people would say, we don't like that.
No, and I agree. I think anyone that's committing a crime in this country and in this state who is not a resident needs to be deported immediately. I lived in Australia for 3 years, and when I was there, I knew that if I got in trouble, I'd get kicked out. So I was on my best behavior the whole time. And frankly, most immigrants, legal and illegal, in this country are on their best behavior. And if you look at the stats, they have very low crime rates.
Let's put you in the corner office for a hypothetical here. I know candidates don't like this, but this is an interesting one since we have a lot of unprecedented things going on. If you're the governor and President Trump wants to deploy U.S. Marines to, say, Manchester and Nashua, how are you using state resources in response? Are you trying to create a kind of peacekeeping buffer between them and protesters, or are you cooperating?
You know, that's a good question. I definitely would do what Gavin Newsom has done and go to the courts and try to stop that, because clearly it's a violation of the Constitution. You know, we have a clear, directive in the Constitution to not have the military in our cities and in our towns, and we need to follow the Constitution. That is very important. Republicans, do not forget the Constitution. Democrats, do not forget the Constitution. The people that wrote it were very wise, and we need to keep that in mind at all times.
As we wrap up here, you know, the early part of these campaigns, a lot of it is those sort of town and local, city, county, Republican or Democratic meetings, the rubber chicken dinners, et cetera. As an independent candidate, you don't have that, so how are you going to campaign?
You know, that has honestly been one of my biggest hurdles, and that's why we're forming the New Hampshire Independent Party. We're just getting this off the ground right now, but we're hoping to create town and county groups that we can meet up all over the state. And I'm hoping, hey, if you're a Democratic county or town chair and you're frustrated with the leadership and frustrated with the way the party is going, hey, there's a new party in town, and Republicans too. If you're tired of voting for people that are not aligned with your better economic issues, there's a new party in town, and we're here for you, not for the donor class.
All right. Jon Kiper, thanks for joining us on Close-Up. We appreciate your time. Right. And when we come back, the Secretary of Defense being challenged by Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander over following the Constitution. Stay with us.